My daughter betrayed me, choosing my wife's affair partner as her dad, so I disinherited her and spent her $80K college fund on myself. Now he abandoned her, and she's begging forgiveness. But I'm 42 years old. I work as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, and about 3 years ago, my life turned into something I never imagined I'd experience. I guess I should start from the beginning, or from when everything started falling apart, because what happened with my daughter, Ava, basically destroyed me in a way I didn't know was possible. I was married to Nicole for 16 years, and I thought we had a good life. You know, nothing perfect but solid, with our daughter and our plans and everything you build when you've been with someone that long. But turns out that while I thought that, Nicole had something else in mind. Or rather, someone else in mind. I found out about the affair in the worst possible way. Like I found messages on her phone one night when she was in the shower. I wasn't snooping or anything. Her phone rang and I was just going to see if it was something important, but what I saw was a message from some guy, Jordan, that said something like, "Can't wait to see you. Tomorrow, I miss you so much," with some emojis that made it pretty clear this wasn't a normal coworker. Obviously, I checked more messages and there it all was. Months of conversations, of plans to meet up, of things that made me feel like the biggest idiot in the world. When I confronted her that night, Nicole didn't even deny it much. She just said she'd fallen in love with Jordan and that she'd been feeling unhappy with me for a while. The truth is the conversation was awful, with Ava in her room hearing everything because we started yelling, and me saying things I probably shouldn't have said, but that in that moment, I felt with every fiber of my being. The divorce was a mess. Like they all are, I guess. But this one was especially ugly because Nicole moved in with Jordan almost immediately after we finalized everything legally. Ava was like 11 when this happened, almost 12. And at first she seemed to be handling it relatively okay, or so I thought. We had a shared custody agreement, 1 week with me and 1 week with Nicole, and the first few weeks or months were weird but manageable. Ava was quiet, like more reserved than normal, but I assumed it was part of the process, that she needed time to adjust to having 2 homes and to all this new reality that none of us had asked for. What I didn't see coming, and I swear I didn't see it coming at all, was how Jordan slowly became this important figure for Ava. At first she mentioned him casually, like, "Jordan drove me to school," or "Jordan made pasta for dinner." And I swallowed the rage and resentment I felt every time I heard his name, because I didn't want Ava to think I was jealous, or that I was a bitter father. But over time, the mentions became more frequent and more, I don't know, enthusiastic, I guess. Jordan helped me with my math homework and explained it really well. Or, Jordan says next summer we can go camping. And each comment was like a little stab, but I kept smiling and saying things like, "That's good. I'm glad for you," when inside I wanted to scream. My sister Barbara was my support through all this, honestly. She lived like 2 hours away but called me almost every day to see how I was doing. And when things got really heavy, she'd get in the car and come stay with me for a few days. Barbara never had kids. She dedicated herself to her career as a lawyer, but she was always super close to Ava, like the favorite aunt who bought her expensive gifts and took her to do fun things. She was the one who told me, like a year after the divorce, that Ava was changing and that I needed to pay attention. David. The girl is confused, and Nicole is filling her head with who knows what things about Jordan. Barbara told me one night while we were having coffee in my kitchen. And she was right. But what could I do? I couldn't control what happened at Nicole's house. I couldn't prevent Ava from spending time with Jordan. I couldn't do anything except try to be the best father possible during my weeks with her. But things gradually got worse, like when the tide comes in and you don't realize it until the water's up to your neck. Ava started arriving at my house on Sunday nights with a different attitude, more distant, more cutting. When I'd ask her how her week with her mom was, her answers were one word: fine, normal, nothing special. And when I tried to plan things to do together during our week, like going to the movies or going out to dinner at her favorite restaurant, she'd say she was tired or had a lot of homework or preferred to stay in her room. At 13, Ava basically lived on her phone, which I guess is normal for teenagers, but I felt like I was completely losing touch with her life, that she was pulling away from me in a way I didn't know how to stop. The worst came when Ava was 14, like 8 months before everything really exploded. It was a Friday night, the first night of my week with her, and I had tried to do something special. Like I ordered pizza from her favorite place and rented that movie she'd mentioned she wanted to watch. But when I told her everything was ready, she looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on her face before, like pure coldness, and said she didn't feel like it, that she preferred to go to her room. And I know this was a mistake, but I was frustrated and tired of walking on eggshells all the time, told her something like, "Ava, I'm making an effort here. The least you could do is spend time with me during your week here." And I swear this hurt me more than anything, Nicole said to me during the divorce, looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You know what? Jordan never forces me to spend time with him. Jordan understands when I need space. Jordan is the father I deserve, and he's better for me than you." I stood there in the kitchen, with the pizza box still in my hands, feeling like I'd been hit in the stomach with a baseball bat. I couldn't breathe. I literally felt like the air had a Nevertine egg stain, been knocked out of my lungs. Ava turned around and went to her room, slamming the door, and I was left alone trying to process what I'd just heard. Jordan is the father I deserve. Those words kept spinning in my head the rest of the night. While I threw away the pizza because I wasn't hungry anymore, while I sat on the couch staring at the wall until 3 in the morning, while I tried to understand at what point I'd lost my daughter. The next few days were mechanical, like I'd go to work, come home, Ava would come out of her room only to eat something and then lock herself in again, and I didn't know what to do or what to say. I texted Barbara telling her what had happened, and she called me immediately, furious. "That girl is being manipulated," she told me. "Nicole and that idiot Jordan are turning her against you." But I wasn't sure it was just that. I mean, yeah, there was probably some influence from Nicole, but the way Ava had looked at me, the conviction in her voice when she said Jordan was a better father than me, that came from her, from what she really felt. And that destroyed me in a way I can't explain well. I made a decision after that week, and I know a lot of people are going to think it was wrong or that it was cruel or that it was immature, but at that moment, I felt it was what I needed to do to protect myself. I went to my lawyer and changed all my documents, all my insurance policies, everything I had in AVA's name as beneficiary, and put Barbara in her place. My sister was now the sole beneficiary of my life insurance, my retirement accounts, everything. I'd also been saving for Ava's college since she was born. I had like $80,000 in that college fund, and I decided that if she already had the father she deserved, then that father could pay for her college. I started using that money for myself, for things I'd wanted to do, but had always postponed because I was saving for Ava's future. Barbara invited me to go to Europe with her that summer, like a 3-week trip through France and Italy that she'd been planning to do alone, and I said yes. I used part of the money from Ava's college fund to pay for my part of the trip, to buy new clothes, to not worry about the budget when we were there. It was the first time in years I felt a bit like myself again, walking through Paris with Barbara, eating at good restaurants, visiting museums, not constantly thinking about Ava and how I'd failed as a father. Barbara told me I needed to forgive, that Ava was just a confused teenager, but I still felt that open wound every time I remembered her words. And when I got back from the trip, Ava was in her week with Nicole, so I didn't see her until the following Sunday. She arrived at my house like always, with her backpack and her annoyed face. But this time there was something different in her expression, like anxiety or worry. She didn't say anything to me that first day, but on Tuesday night, while I was in my office working on some reports, she knocked on the door and came in with her laptop. "I need to talk to you about something," she said, and I thought that maybe we were finally going to have a real conversation. But no. What happened was that she showed me an email she'd received from the university where I'd opened the savings account for her, telling her that the account had been closed and the funds had been withdrawn. "What is this?" Ava asked me, and I could see she was trying to stay calm, but she was angry. I explained, trying to sound as neutral as possible, that I'd made some changes to my personal finances and that I'd decided to use that money for other things. "But that money was for my college," she said. And I know this sounded cruel, but I said it anyway, responded, "That money was mine. I saved it, and I decided to use it another way." She asked me if this had to do with what she'd said about Jordan, and I told her yes, that her words had made it very clear to me that he had the father she needed, and that I was no longer necessary in that role, so I was adjusting my life accordingly. Ava stared at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing, and then asked me if I'd also changed other things, like my life insurance. I told her the truth, that yes, that now Barbara was my beneficiary and everything. So basically you're punishing me, she said, and I responded, no, Ava, I'm taking you at your word. You said Jordan is the father you deserve, so he can be responsible for you. She started crying and told me I was horrible, that she couldn't believe I was being so petty, and then she went to her room and didn't come out for the rest of the night. The next day, like at 10 in the morning while I was in a work meeting, I got like 5 missed calls from Nicole. When I could finally answer, she was yelling so much I had to hold the phone away from my ear. She accused me of punishing Ava, of being a horrible father, of using money as a weapon against our daughter. She's a child, David, a 4-year-old child, and you're acting like she's your enemy. Nicole was yelling at me. And I, who honestly was fed up with everything, responded, your daughter told me that Jordan is a better father than me, that he's the father she deserves. If that's what she believes, then Jordan can assume those responsibilities. Nicole told me I was being immature, and that this wasn't going to stay like this, and hung up before I could respond. The next few weeks were probably the worst of my life, or at least tied with when I found out about Nicole's affair. Ava kept coming to my house on her assigned weeks because the custody agreement was still in effect, but it was like living with a ghost. She only came out of her room to go to school and to eat, and when we were in the same room, she wouldn't even look at me. I tried a couple of times to start conversations, like asking her how school had gone or if she needed help with anything, but her answers were monosyllables or straight-up silence. The tension in the house was so thick you could cut it with a knife, as they say, and I felt miserable but also stubborn. Like, I wasn't going to be the one to take the first step to fix this when she had been the one who said those horrible things. Barbara came to visit me one weekend, like 2 months after this whole situation, and Ava was there during my week. My sister arrived on a Friday night and immediately noticed how bad things were. Like Ava didn't even come down to say hello when she arrived, and Barbara, who had always been like a second mother to Ava, I looked worried. On Saturday afternoon, while I was at the supermarket, Barbara knocked on Ava's room door and asked to talk. I don't know exactly what they said to each other, because Barbara didn't tell me everything and I didn't ask Ava. But they were in there locked up for like an hour, and when they came out, Ava's eyes were red from crying. That night, like at 9, Ava came down to the living room where I was watching TV and sat on the other end of the couch. She stayed there in silence for several minutes, and I didn't know if I should say something or wait for her to speak. Finally, with a very low voice, she said, "Barbara says I hurt you a lot with what I said." I didn't respond immediately because I felt like if I spoke I was going to start crying or screaming. I wasn't sure which. After a moment, I told her, "Yes, you hurt me, Ava. A lot." She nodded and went quiet again, and then said, "But you hurt me too, taking away my college fund and removing me from your life insurance." And she was right. I knew it. But I still said, "You told me that Jordan was a better father than me, that he was the father you deserved. How did you expect me to react to that?" We had our first real conversation in months that night, like really talking instead of just yelling at each other or ignoring each other. Ava explained to me that she'd been angry with me about the divorce, that even though she knew Mom had been the one who had the affair, I had also yelled and said ugly things that night. She heard everything. And that Jordan at first had been super good with her, like he listened to her and made her feel important. "But I didn't mean it," she said, "about Jordan being a better father than you. I was just angry and wanted to hurt you because I felt like you had abandoned me too." I explained to her that I'd never abandoned her, that the divorce had nothing to do with her, but I understood that at her age, it was hard to see things that way. It wasn't a complete reconciliation that night. Like we didn't hug and everything was magically solved, but it was a start, I guess. Things kept being awkward for a while, but at least we were talking to each other again. At least Ava came out of her room when she was with me, and we had dinner together sometimes. I still hadn't changed anything about the finances or life insurance, and she didn't pressure me about it, which I appreciated because I still wasn't ready to make those decisions again. Then, like 4 months after that conversation with Ava, something happened that changed everything again. It was a Thursday night, like 11:30, and I was already in bed, almost asleep, when my phone started ringing. It was Ava, and she was in her week with Nicole, so I immediately thought something bad had happened. I answered, and the first thing I heard was that she was crying, like sobbing in a way that made me sit up immediately in bed, with my heart beating fast. "Ava? What happened? Are you okay?" I asked her, and she could barely speak between sobs. She told me she needed me to come get her, that please could I come pick her up at Mom's house. Obviously, I got dressed in 2 minutes and ran out to the car, like I didn't even put on proper shoes, just some flip-flops. I called Ava while I was driving to make sure she was okay, and she told me through tears that Jordan had arrived at the house around 9, and that he and Nicole had started fighting because apparently Jordan had been going out with another woman, and Nicole had just found out. The fight escalated, and when Ava came out of her room to see what was happening, Jordan yelled at her to mind her own business and called her a useless brat who's worth nothing. Nicole defended him instead of defending Ava, told her she was being dramatic and to go to her room, and Ava said that in that moment she realized that everything Jordan had been with her was a lie, that he'd been acting to impress Nicole, and that he really didn't care about anything. I got to Nicole's house like 20 minutes later, and Ava was sitting on the front steps with her backpack, waiting for me. I didn't even knock on the door to talk to Nicole. I just opened the car door for Ava, and we left. During the drive back to my house, Ava wouldn't stop apologizing like, "You were right about him, Dad. You were right, and I was an idiot. I'm so sorry." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to say, "I told you so," but another part just wanted to hug her and tell her everything was going to be okay. When we got home, I made her hot chocolate like I used to when she was little, and we sat at the kitchen table until 3 in the morning while she told me everything that had been happening with Jordan in recent months, how he'd started showing his true personality, how he'd made her feel bad about herself several times, but she didn't want to admit it. Ava told me she'd been wanting to talk to me about this for weeks, but was afraid I'd tell her she deserved it for choosing Jordan over me, or that I didn't care what happened to her anymore. "I could never not care what happens to you," I told her. "You're my daughter, Ava. You're always going to be my daughter no matter what happens." She started crying again, and asked me if I could forgive her for everything, for what she'd said to me, for how she'd treated me, for believing Jordan when he said bad things about me. I told her I'd already forgiven her, that I'd actually done it months ago, but that I'd also been hurt and angry and had reacted in ways that weren't right. We also talked about the college fund and life insurance, and Ava told me she understood why I'd done it. That even though it hurt her, she understood I was also suffering and had reacted from that place. She asked me if someday I could consider changing things back, and I was honest with her. I told her, "I need time, Ava, and I need to see that you really want to rebuild our relationship, that it's not just because things with Jordan went bad." She nodded and said she understood, that she was willing to work on it for as long as necessary. It's been like 6 months since that night, and things have improved a lot between Ava and me, honestly. She asked to change the custody agreement to spend more time with me, like now she's with me 2 weeks and with Nicole 1 week, and Nicole accepted it probably because she felt guilty about what happened with Jordan. Ava and I have been going to therapy together, like family therapy sessions, to work on everything that happened and on how to communicate better. It's not perfect, obviously, like we still have difficult moments and arguments, but it's different now. It feels more real and more honest. As for the money thing, I still haven't changed anything officially, and Ava hasn't pressured me about it at all. Barbara tells me I should consider at least restoring some of the college fund, that Ava really is trying and deserves that second chance. And I guess she's right. Like I can see the effort Ava is making, how she opens up to me about her problems at school, how she seeks me out when she needs advice, how sometimes she just comes and sits with me while I watch TV for no particular reason. I'll probably talk to my lawyer next month about restoring at least part of the college fund. Not all at once, but start rebuilding that too. Last week, Ava asked me if I remembered when she was little and I'd take her to the park every Saturday morning, and how we'd play on the swings until she got dizzy from laughing so much. I told her yes, that I remembered it perfectly. And she said, "Do you think we could go back to doing those things together, like making new good memories?" And that made me realize that maybe, just maybe, we're going to be okay after all.